Yeah, I love learning. I think that the day you stop learning is the day you're dead. Even if you think you're alive and you're not learning, there's not a day you can't. There's so many people in so many different walks of life that have knowledge. Why would you stop learning? Why, if you can improve?
Hello and welcome to the Randall Osché Podcast, where honest conversations take the lead. Each week, we sit down with entrepreneurs, artists, thinkers, and change makers to unpack how they got from there to here and what they learned along the way. Real stories, no filters, lessons earned through experience. So you can take what's useful and leave the rest. Whether you're tuning in during your commute, a workout, or while making dinner, we're glad you're here. So take a seat, relax, grab a cup of tea, and join in the conversation. Now, let's get into this week's episode.
Pádraic Óg Gallagher, welcome to the show. Pádraic Óg is a chef restaurateur of Gallagher's Boxty House, Gallagher's Brewery, and is an Irish food champion. And if I remember correctly, also happens to be a writer. So Pádraic Óg, care to add anything to that brief intro of yours?
No, thank you, Randall, and thank you for having me on the show. Not much more to add to that than we can tease out over the next hour.
Yeah, perfect. I like it. So first question may or may not be included in the actual podcast, but I do the podcast, as we were discussing a bit earlier before we started recording, to meet people, to have conversations with strangers, because I believe that everybody can learn something from somebody else. With that said, I would be curious to know what made you say yes to having a conversation with a stranger.
Randall, you should probably open a restaurant. I meet 3,000 strangers a week, and you're always learning. And I'm fortunate enough to get paid for it too, so that's even better. No, I have no issue sharing information. I do a lot of research on different things, and I'm always open to conversations. And I like listening to podcasts too. There are different podcasts and different people I would listen to, and it's great to hear other people's views, what's going on, what's happening. So hopefully I can fill you in a little bit of Dublin, Ireland, and what's been happening in the Irish food scene over here.
Someday, maybe I would like to open up a restaurant. A bit about my background. My first job was in a restaurant as a dishwasher. And then quickly thereafter, they hired two, I think I was 16 or 17-year-old. They hired like another person, my peer. They hired him to be a line cook, me to be the dishwasher. After a few weeks, he wasn't working out as being the line cook. His name's Cody. Shout out to Cody. And they switched us. They're like, oh, do you want to cook? I was like, yeah, washing dishes is miserable. Like, I'll try to be a line cook. So I did that through like high school, and then I cooked through college, and then part-time jobs here and there. So I have great respect for hospitality, the restaurant industry.
I read a stat that 50% of most people in the USA have at some time or other worked in hospitality.
I wouldn't doubt that. The thing that I think that I would love to see a study on is I think that people in hospitality are superior people. I think it provides you with a skill set, a learned skill set of various things, how to deal with people, how to cope with stress, very stressful environment, that if you haven't done that type of work, you just don't develop those muscles, mental or physical. And when I come 100%. Across people in my adult life that you started in hospitality, are in hospitality, like they just seem to have a better head on their shoulders. Not scientific, just an observation.
No, it is true. If you think about the amount of medics that have come through restaurants, through college and stuff like that as well. But I know it from personal experience. You get a 17, 18-year-old kid coming into the restaurant, they're shy, they're introverted, they're communicating with their thumbs. Give them to me for a couple of years and bang, they'll be out there. They have to deal with situations that most kids don't normally have to deal with, and you're on the spot and you got to sort it. So it's good.
I don't know if this is like this in Ireland, but in the U.S., there's things that happen in kitchens or restaurants that aren't acceptable. Like in a working environment, there are things that happen in restaurants between employees, between staff, even between customers, that if that happened in a corporate American environment, everybody would be fired. The whole department would be dismissed. Yeah. Right or wrong, it happened.
It's a mix of chefs and alcohol.
Yes.
Not both at the same time, maybe, but It's a funny environment. It really is a funny environment.
It is unique.
But it's an electric environment. It's hot, it's sharp, it just moves. The buzz, it's incredible.
One of the biggest compliments in my life, I think, is I had worked in restaurants through high school, through college, and then early on in my career when I wasn't making as much money as I wanted to, I did it like part-time. And I had this job in a steakhouse, and I just did it like, I think 2 summers for some extra money while I had my full-time job. So I worked Friday, dinner shift, and then I worked all day on Sunday, prep till close. And the chef that had hired me, like I told him about my background, I've done this before. And he's, yeah, come in, we'll try you out and see how that goes. And after the first shift, he was just like, oh yeah, like I've seen you've done this before. Just moving through the kitchen, saying things, coming around hot or whatever. There's a fluidity to it.
It's a dance.
Yeah.
It's a dance. It really is. You're moving. Like our kitchen is very tight. Like 3 people it's a crowd in our kitchen. Or 4 is a crowd, but 3 is tight. So we run it that way. But you're dancing around people all the time, and you get to know somebody else's rhythm. So you know when they're moving, where they're moving, how they move, and what they're going to do. So you can predict that. And that's how you know when somebody's worked in the industry too. You watch how they dance. You'll know that in a few hours.
Yeah. You don't want to be bumping into people with hot pan and such.
Shoo.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned about it being electric is I never played sports at a high level. I played high school, like American football. There's a sense of adrenaline that you get from that. The only thing that I've come close to a Friday night game is working in a kitchen in a dinner rush. And I don't have the stamina to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But I often say this, that I would love to, for fun, I would volunteer to work in a kitchen occasionally, but I wouldn't. I'm too big of a sissy to commit to doing it full time because it does give you a buzz. And I don't think I've come across anything in my adult life that gives me that.
It's funny, that one. I don't do the pass anymore. I've obviously got people that do it better than me, but I don't do floor much anymore because I'm going into semi-converted commas retirement, I think. Trying to anyway. I've got a 5-year plan. But the buzz I get at the door when guests leave and thank me for a lovely meal, or a lovely hospitality, or having a lovely evening, that's a great buzz. Yeah. And that's one of the buzzes that I get instill in my managers. That's so important. If you're not receiving that, you're doing something wrong, and there's no point in doing it. So that's what we strive for all the time. And I think we're pretty good at it. So I'm happy out, but you're only ever as happy as your last, or only ever as good as your last meal, or as my accountant says, your last GP.
I like that. The staff that works there, do you have a fair amount of turnover, or have you had the same?
I can't get rid of them. I've got guys working with me for 25, 28 years, and it's great. It really is. And obviously we do get a certain amount of turnover, and especially after COVID, I lost a few good guys that just left the industry, and they were really good, and they were with me 11, 12 years. But during COVID, we had a staff of about 50, so we kept on 10 during COVID. These guys, and it's just to keep the place alive. And we were hit hard in Ireland. We were shut for 18 months. Yeah. So that was hard going. And when we reopened, I had my guys, I had my people there that were with me 20 years or whatever, or 15 at that stage. I can't even remember what it was, but they were there and ready to go again. And they were ready to train in other people as well. I always say, and I don't mean to sound bad about this, but if you have a machine in your restaurant and it's cost you whatever, 20 grand, you're not just going to throw it out. You know what I mean? If you've got somebody working with you, that's skill, that's set. That's just so important because you spend a lot of years trying to instill it in somebody, and for me it's always from the top down, and it has to come from the top down as well. I want my guys reflecting on floor, and they don't work for me, they work with me. And that's an important thing for me. I like people to work with me, and we're a good employer, but we're also good fun.
I like that. I like to parse out different things across like my journey, leadership lessons and stuff like that. And for the people that I've had positions in my career where I've been the direct manager of people, I run the podcast, I have a team of people that work for me now. But the same thing, I would say they work with me. Like I want this to be a collaborative thing. I know what I know. I also know what they know. And those are 2 different things. And I want them to say, hey, you're being stupid. You need to go in this direction, or you need to not do that. So I want to work with people, I want to work with them. I don't want them to work for me. And I want to create a culture where they feel comfortable working with me.
That's important, man. Yeah. And another thing that when employing people, and especially in management, I always look to somebody that can do it better than me.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. So there's no point and if they need me, then I don't need them. Do you know what I mean? So especially in management terms, if you're coming to me and asking me to answer your question that you should know, and I'm paying you to know, why am I paying you? So just get on with the job, do the job. If you make mistakes, okay, fine, as long as you learn from them.
Yeah.
That's just what.
That's my approach too. The thing that I have low tolerance for, that I'm trying to get better at, is don't make me tell you the same thing twice. I don't want to have the same conversation twice. I understand that some people, I think that's mostly a me problem, and sometimes that's the other person problem, but maybe I could get better.
A little bit of both.
Better at articulating my point, but don't make me have the same conversation twice. I did want to circle back to the restaurant environment, and this conversation might bounce around a little bit, but you were talking about creating a great customer experience, and you're only as good as your last meal served. I did some poking around at your Google reviews and your TripAdvisor reviews, and I think both had around 4.4 stars, with Google reviews at 5,000 some, which is a fair amount of reviews. Yeah. And then TripAdvisor, I think maybe had 7,000, and that was about 4.4 stars as well.
Yeah.
There was two I'd like to read for you, and then we can maybe talk a little bit about maybe how you got here. But I think this one's uniquely interesting. So it says, we were in Dublin for only 4 days. We ate at Gallagher's Boxty house every day without fail. We didn't even bother trying any other local restaurants because we knew nothing could compete. The food was absolutely amazing, and dining here was the highlight of every day in Dublin. So just to pause on that one for a little bit. I've traveled a little bit. I was in Rome for a couple days, and I went to a restaurant, and plenty of other restaurants, plenty of other good restaurants, maybe. But so happens to the first night there, I ate at a fantastic place. And when it came to go eat somewhere the next night, I was like, I don't need to look. I want to go back there. I had such a good experience. There's plenty of other options. I don't care. Great experience, great service, great food. I want to enjoy that same thing again. I'm willing to forgo other options to enjoy that lovely experience again. So when I read that one, it really hit me because I've been there before, and I think I know what it feels like. But from the owner-operator, restaurateur perspective, when you read something like that and it's read back to you, and somebody's visiting Dublin for 4 days, and I'm sure there's plenty of other options, but they want to go to your place. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel great. You should have tried 2 other places. Oh, it does. It makes me feel good. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And especially when you go, I tell my guys on floor, when you come, you're a stranger in the city, you'll make 2 best friends. One will be the waiter that serves you, and the other will be a taxi driver. And that's how you discover what's going on in the city. And they're so important. So our guys are actually trained in telling people where to go, what are the restaurants to visit, what museums to go and see, what good pubs to go, where to get live music and stuff like that. So we try to give an experience for the city. So not just pushing ourselves, because we're busy, but yes, that's phenomenal to get 4 nights and 4 days in a row. And shout out to those guys, and a shout out to my team for making that happen.
Yeah, there was a few names. I don't remember them all, but some of the names of your staff kept coming up in all the same reviews.
Debbie, Ogie, they're the top 3, I'd say, and they're just good at what they do.
Yeah, love that. I think that you're spot on. I never thought about it like that before, but when I'm in a new city, I talk to the Uber driver, right? I text it to taxi driver, and I'm not even an extroverted person. If I was in the States, I'd probably just shut up. But when I'm out and about or in a new city, I'm trying to solicit. One, I'm trying to make conversation. 2, I'm trying to solicit information, right? Would you go here? Where would you go? Where, as a local, tell me what your favorite place is to go. So I think you're spot on. I never really put the 2 things together. And as I think about it, when I've been out traveling, there's a few conversations that still stick with me that I've had with waiters in restaurants that telling me to go here and there. And I didn't necessarily solicit from them, but great observation. I guess just on that note, where you've had the observation where customers make 2 best friends in the city, the taxi driver and say the server, and then putting that together to then train your staff to be listen, this is how it works. We're going to serve great food. We're going to get it out on time, and it's going to be warm. But in addition to that, we want to provide a great experience for the visitors of the city. So this is some other things that I want you to really work on and nail is being able to recommend people where to go in other restaurants. I guess first part of that is like, how did you get there?
I guess just from travel as well. And hospitality is in our nature. I know it sounds cliche and stuff like that, but it is in the Irish nature. It's actually, hospitality is written in our old Brehon laws, believe it or not. So you had to have an open house and be hospitable if somebody passed by and have some food for them. But where that comes from, I guess, again, from travel, and travel is the best training ground for anything like that. But there's also our travel board, the government, do training, have done training 10 years ago for, what do they call them, Dublin ambassadors. So we'd put some of our guys on that. We also, in the past couple of years, I don't know if you've heard, I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the 30% rule. He's an American. He's really good at getting your guys working on floor and understanding, because you've got the guest. He's sitting down, he or she, and they want to spend money. And it's up to you to make sure that they have a good time and enjoy spending their money. I know I work hard for my money and I love spending money, but you know what? I hate bad service. You can forgive bad food sometimes. Bad service is just, when somebody's serving you and they think they're above you or they shouldn't be doing this job, or I'm studying to be, or, the best one is I'm actually an actor, or I'm actually a musician. I'm just doing this part-time. And I says, I love actors. Actors are great because you can give them lines and you can train them in. They can be natural and stuff like that. But the musicians are as hard as chefs.
Prickly people.
Yeah.
One of the things when I have bad experience, I always say, like, why are you making it hard for me to give you my money? Like, why are you introducing friction points into this experience? I work hard for my money. I also enjoy spending my money, and I will spend more money if it's a good experience. But when it's bad experience or bad food or bad service or bad product even, why are you making it hard for me to give you my money? Make it easy for me to give you my money. That's the whole objective of running a business, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'm in here. I'm sitting down. Like, how more difficult can you actually make it?
Right.
To leave a place with a bad taste in your mouth like that too. I'm old enough to know now it happens and you get over it and you move on. But a lot of the times I'd say, okay, forget it. You vote with your feet. Yeah. I'm not going back there. But sometimes I do too, because it depends on situations and where it is. There's a pizza place I go to, and I won't say where it is, but the pizzas are fairly good. But the service sometimes can be atrocious. You know what? Because it's easy and it's on my way back from our brewery into town or in home. I'd stop in quickly for something and I'd say, good, because they have good beer as well. But it's so sad when you look at things like that and you say, man, you could just make so much more money if you did this right.
Yeah. I mean, that's, and I guess that's where like maybe some people are like less motivated to do it as we.
It's not money the motivation either, but it helps pay the bills.
Right. I think at the end of the day, we're all in this for profit, right? Like in my day job, I always talk about this, but when I'm in meetings with customers, I'm only there for the profitability of my company. You're only there for the profitability of your company. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Now, there's other things that are, you're passionate about the restaurant business and hospitality, I am sure. Would you do all of this for free? I don't know.
I might do a stat or two.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm learning. That's not for free. I'm there to learn something.
It's an investment in that case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As promised, the conversation a bit all over the place, but I love it. Good stuff so far. I want to back up, though, and get to the origin of all of this. Before Gallagher's Boxty House became what it is today, what did life look like for you before that? Take me back to like how you got into the restaurant industry. I know earlier you said your first job was as a dishwasher. So how did you go from dishwasher to, it's been 30 some years you've been running the restaurant?
Yeah, in my 38th year now, this restaurant.
Yeah. So how did that all start for you?
Long story. I was reared in County Leitrim, which is the northwest of Ireland. My dad was a veterinary surgeon and my mum was an entrepreneur. We had a pub and a farm. So I grew up behind the bar and I also worked on the farm. So I had a rural background, and I remember I ended up in boarding school anyway, because I wasn't studying at home. I wasn't, so they sent me off to boarding school. Anyway, I didn't do very well academically, but I left home. Actually, I was in college and I decided I didn't want to do this. So I went home to my dad. It was before Easter, so I'm not sitting his exams here. It was my first year and I wanted to do architectural drawing. And I said, I'm going to leave. I'm going to quit college. And he turned around and said, he says, "Are you sure about that now?" I said, "Yeah, pretty sure." He said, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to give you 2 weeks to think about it. And after the 2 weeks, the decision, leave the house." Because 9 of us in the family, so putting 9 kids through college is not easy for no matter what you do. So I did anyway. And I worked as an architectural draftsman for a year and really decided I don't want to do this. So I started traveling back in the 80s. I traveled Europe. I ended up out in the Caribbean working on yachts, cooking on yachts without any formal training. I remember buying The Joy of Cooking. What's her name? It's a very old book, but a great book to start to learn stuff on. And it was private entertainment, really. If you were maybe 2 or maybe 6 people you were cooking for, it was pretty good paid, good tips. So I did that for a couple of years out of Antigua and lived in Venezuela off season. And that was where I was washing pots. I was washing pots for these Syrians. I was trying to learn Spanish. And they used to make their flatbreads and fill the center with koftas. And I was brought up in Boxty in Truman. It was a pancake. There's 3 types of Boxty: the boiled, baked, and pan. But the pan was the most popular one because it was cooked on the griddle. And I was taught myself, you've washed pots. And the most important thing in your mind is, how am I going to get out of this and what am I going to do? Why am I washing pots? What can I do with my life to make it all better? So I dreamt up the concept of doing a Boxty house and creating an Irish-themed restaurant through Boxty. So we had several different Boxties and filled them. And now it wasn't that easy of a journey. That was probably 1985. I came back to Ireland in around 87. It was dead. It was terrible. We had to emigrate back in the 70s because there was no work in Ireland. In the 80s, it was worse. Unemployment was huge. And I went to London for a year and worked for a guy in Covent Garden in Endell Street. And a really good guy, actually. Learned a lot from him. But he wanted to open a Mexican restaurant in Dublin and sent me back to Dublin to do the research, which I did. And then London went through a blip. His restaurant started to suffer, so he pulled out. So I'm here deciding, God, will I just go traveling again? I said, maybe I'll go to India this time. I go east as opposed to west. And I ended up talking to my brother about my concept, my idea. And about a year later, we got opened. So that's really how it happened. But it's based on a food product that I missed while in Venezuela, in Caracas, and just knowledge and stuff I picked up from along the way. Trinidad and Tobago, I used to get chana boxty or chana roti of the Rastas there. And it was street food, great. So discovering all this stuff. And then the pollo, the arepa de pollo con guasacaca in Caracas, I'd go back for that. Might be a little bit safer today, but anyway. But my idea to open the restaurant was to operate it during the season from, let's say, St. Patrick's Day up until October, and then head back out to the Caribbean and sail for the winter. I haven't been back yet, but it was always a dream. But that's where it developed from, and it just developed with my passion to do open and celebrate Irish food, which was not celebrated. Like people used to ask me then, I'd say, "Oh, I'm opening an Irish restaurant." And they say, "Oh, what are you going to serve?" That's the question back. Nobody had an idea what Irish food was. And then we have a rich kind of heritage, and part of the research I'm doing at the moment on Florence Irwin is revealing that. But yeah, it came from that. That's how the idea was born, and I just stuck with it.
One of the things, again, the reason why I do this is to learn from other people, but it seems from that experience, we'll circle back to the restaurant part of this too, it seems like you're really receptive to learning. It seems like you're comfortable with knowing that you don't know things and that you're willing to put yourself in situations to learn those things. And I think that's a strong characteristic, but I think that for various reasons, a lot of people don't embrace it. I think maybe they feel like they should know everything already themselves. Maybe they're a bit uncomfortable not being a subject matter expert or as competent as they think that they should be. But from a young age, it seems like you were willing to embrace new experiences.
Well, you're always looking, Randall, no? You're always out there searching for whatever it is. And yeah, I love learning. I think that the day you stop learning is the day you're dead. And that for me, even if you think you're alive and you're not learning, there's not a day you can't. Like you're saying, you love to meet people and talk to them and learn something from them. There's so many people in so many different walks of life that have knowledge that you nearly have to pull. It's like ends teeth. You're trying to pull it out of them sometimes. And they don't accept it, or they don't understand that they have something to offer. Or I'm rambling here a little bit. I don't know. It's just, for me, it's natural. It's normal. Why would you stop learning? Why, if you can improve? Listen, I wouldn't have a restaurant open 37 years if I didn't change. if I didn't move, if I didn't keep learning, if I didn't keep developing, not just the food concept, the theory behind it, the people, that for me it's natural. It's normal. I think people that are telling you that they know everything, number one, are full of shit. And number two, they're full of shit.
Agree. Strongly agree.
Let's take a quick break from today's episode. If you're enjoying the conversation, take a second to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you're tuning in. We'd really appreciate it. You can also find us on Instagram at Randall Osché. That's RANDALLOSCHE. And check out more at podcast.randallosché.com, including show notes and other resources from today's episode. All right, back to the conversation.
So you opened up the restaurant with your brother. Was that a joint venture, or would he just give you the motivation?
It was a joint venture. There were three of us at the time. And one friend, he was a designer. So they got the concept. I'd spoken to a few people about it, and people never actually got the concept. They did get the concept. And we worked together for, it's a long story, this one. We bought the lease on the premises in 88. It was an old locksmith's. We got opened in February 89. We had a couple of write-ups by April. We were quite successful. We had expanded then into the unit next door, which gave us a 70, 80-seater restaurant by November 1989. And then we decided to go to Cork and open up in Cork. I think one of your questions along the way is something to do with the fact that a pivotal moment in your life that changed was whatever. Cork went well. He ended up losing $500,000 in Cork and going into a Chapter 11. So we entered into a payment scheme and we repaid debtors and stuff over a 7-year period. But everyone we did sting or did go down with, we worked with them afterwards and we all made money. It's all about a win-win situation, that one, I think. But that was a big learning curve. That was my MBA, really. Yeah. That was tough. That was really hard. And I got married in the middle of it. So that was even better. And we're still married.
Love. Good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Two things I know to be true from my journey having these conversations, right, is that I always say things are going to be harder than you anticipate and things are going to take longer than you anticipate. Even if you think it's going to be hard and even if you think it's going to be a long time. I'm impressed. Like, it seems like you hit the ground running and you opened in 1989 and you said by April you were rather successful. That's pretty remarkable, I would say, to be that successful that early on. What would you attribute some of that early success to, if you see it that way?
Kind of a revival in the country and a belief in ourselves. We turned a cornerstone. There was a new government in power and there was investment coming back into the country. But also, when I opened up, and we're in Temple Bar, which is in the centre of Dublin. It's a tourist area now. It wasn't a tourist area back then. It was actually destined to be all demolished and turned into a bus depot. But we fought that. But there were, I think, maybe 8 or 9 restaurants in the area at the time when I opened. But remember, back in 88, people didn't go out to eat like they do today. In Ireland especially, it was an occasional thing. You went out and it was a special occasion for birthdays, anniversaries and stuff like that. So it was a very different era. But today, as I said, there was about 8 restaurants in the area back then. Today, there are something like maybe 88. And this is in a square mile. It's a very different environment. But we also did something different. There's still nobody doing proper Boxty or anything like we do in Ireland. And there's been attempts and there's been copies in the States, but there's still nothing like what we do. And it is a very different experience. And we call it's the Gallagher's Boxty House experience. It's not just about the food, it's about the people. It's about the Bia kind Ceol agus crack. Bia is food, is talk, Ceol is music, and crack is fun. It's not the stuff you smoke.
I like that experience, and I think that goes back to what you were talking about earlier about how you train up your staff to provide that experience. I have a question specifically about your Boxty recipe because I was watching your video on that, and then I want to maybe segue into the cultural mission, maybe if we want to categorize it like that. Question about white pepper. So I know your recipe, I know people use white pepper for different reasons, so this is an educational moment for me. But in your Boxty recipe, you added white pepper.
Yeah.
Why white pepper? Or
black pepper leaves specks.
That's it, right?
That's it.
Okay.
It's also a different flavor of white pepper. It's very different to black pepper. And I don't use a lot of white pepper in a lot of stuff, but if you've added black pepper into it, it just doesn't look the same. And growing up, it was just salt in it, really. It was salt and it was lathered in butter. So that's really, and the butter gives a great flavor. Butter and potatoes are like a marriage in heaven.
Yeah.
Because we actually eat the dry, floury potatoes more so. That would be preferred for Irish people. I think your Idaho is probably a dry, floury type of potato, as opposed to the waxy one. I have a huge dilemma at home. My wife loves waxy potatoes and I can't stand them. So I end up cooking 2 different types of potatoes.
That problem solved, happy marriage.
No arguments.
A few extra dishes, but probably worth the investment.
Oh, 100%. You learn quickly, especially with kids, because my son would like a dry potato, but my daughter loves a waxy potato. We have a saying here in Ireland, you must have English blood. The waxy potato was very popular in England.
So there's a bit of cultural divide in the household.
Yeah. But we get by.
Yeah. We touched a little bit about it, like the cultural mission of the restaurant. And we also talked about the way things are today hasn't always been that way. And you've mentioned that people have tried to replicate what you do, but haven't been able to do that. What are your thoughts behind the restaurant, Irish food? And then do you look at the restaurant a bit as like preserving some of that Irish food culture at all?
Yes. Yeah, very much. Boxty would have probably died out. It was dying out. It's a labor-intensive product to produce, and just the changes in economics, the changes in the environment, the changes in, I guess, Ireland, coming from rural farming economy into now IT and tech and pharmaceuticals. A lot of these old skills have died off. People won't take the time to make Boxty at home anymore. When I was growing up as a kid, it was a Friday special. You had a choice between Boxty or fish. Fish being obviously the religious doctrine by fish on a Friday. But the fish we had in inland in Leitrim was usually smoked cod or smoked haddock. And I wasn't particularly fond of it because I do like it today because my mum used to boil it and cook it in milk, and I just never liked it. So I used to take the Boxty instead, and in my friend's mother's house. Which I mentioned once on a TV show here in Ireland, and my mother, I said, Mrs. Mulligan made the best Boxty in our town. My mother saw the program and didn't talk to me for a year. We do Dublin coddle in the restaurant. Dublin coddle is a pork stew, and it's central to Dublin, and it's an old peasant's dish, really. Most of the product would be old peasants. We try to take it forward into a new environment. Like sometimes I make the coddle with chorizo and gives it a beautiful color. But basically it's boiled sausages and bacon with some potatoes and onion. And for me, it's like a cassoulet you get in Carcassonne. I think if you go to Carcassonne in France, every second house will fight about, or every second restaurant will fight about who's making the best cassoulet. That in Dublin, it's only in the past 20 years we started to take a pride in our food. We always had great food, but we never finished it properly. But there's a young cohort of chefs. You can see it from recently, their last month, the Michelin stars coming about from all of Ireland. It's really grown in the past. But we've always had good produce. We have to take a pride in what you produce and what you have. I like to let the meat and the vegetable nearly talk for themselves. If you have to do too much to it, and you're confusing it, it's not my ethos. I'm not Michelin. I don't want to be Michelin. We reenact peasant food from the 18th, 19th century. And that's what we try to put out there and bring in old dishes, just do them very well.
Some of my favorite food is what would be considered peasant dishes. I think that soups and stews are some of my favorites. And I think usually they were peasant dishes because it's what the peasants could afford or the cheaper cuts of meat. Yeah. And so I think you have to put a lot of more love into the dish to make it tender, or more time into it to make it tender or more flavorful. But some of my favorite things are what would be considered peasant dishes. And I think it's enjoyable to eat, enjoyable to cook. And I think it takes some skill, right? Anybody can cook an expensive tenderloin, right? It's already done. All you got to do is apply some heat to it. Big deal. Yeah. Who can't do that?
You'd be surprised.
Fair point. So on the theme of culture as well. So given your interest from your travels, and it seems like you've picked up some different data points from some different cultures and connected the dots there between cuisines as well. And given your 37, 38 years in the restaurant industry, do you feel as though that in years past and maybe decades prior, that there hasn't been as much focus on culture or Irish food culture, and there's a resurgence of that in the last several years, where people are maybe taking more pride or more culturally aware or are seeking to have that cultural experience more now than maybe in years past?
Yes, and most definitely. And led by a cohort of young chefs in Ireland as well. As I said, like a lot of them from culinary school, would part of their culinary education would be doing stages in Michelin star restaurants or whatever throughout Europe. But also Irish people have a tendency to travel. We've always traveled. So you have a lot of young Irish that have spent a number of years in Australia, New Zealand, maybe in Europe, maybe in the States, and come back home to Ireland and open up their restaurants, especially after the crash. And the crash in the 2009 crash was particularly hard for Ireland. We were 6-7 years in recession, and a lot of younger chefs came back, and of course rents were cheap, and they were able to open small restaurants by themselves because of the economy. And they were also practiced in using cheaper cuts, because everyone who was so competitive, you had to use a cheaper cut of meat to actually get your turn at the table. And there's just a huge skill set there of young chefs that are very capable. Work like in London, the amount of Irish chefs in London today that are doing very successful, not necessarily doing Irish food, but they're Irish chefs and they have an Irish restaurant. It wouldn't be themed, but it can be an Irish twist on French. Like I'm French culinary trained. That's where most of our training comes from in Ireland, and most of these young chefs are like that too. So I guess going back to when I opened the Boxty house first and the influence from around the world. I had the Chana Boxty on it, from one I picked up from Trinidad and Tobago. I had I was making the koftas with the zaki in it. And again, something I picked up from the Syrian, but it was more Greek. And it was just a melange of international cuisine that I put into a Boxty and wrapped it and called it, this is Irish food. And that's what we've always done.
Yeah. When you look back on your journey so far, what do you think the restaurant business has taught you about life?
It's fickle. Yeah, enjoy every day.
Yeah.
I think really, what it taught me about life was just a lot of the times keep the head down, keep going. As I said, after the crash, that was the toughest time. And that's only 10 years ago, really, we came out of it. But we went from the staff of 80 down to 32. So as I was losing a manager, we didn't replace it. I just did extra hours. So I was doing like 100-hour weeks. It was just absolutely crazy. It was really tough. And I'm still here. I'm still standing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not a giver. I don't give up. I'm just not a person to say, no, throw in the towel. And I'm not stupid either. But we had a few years of fairly heavy losses, but we managed our business in restaurant business because it's cash flow. If you can manage cash flow, you can manage any business. And that's what it was about for us. But we got through it.
Yeah.
We're back to where we were back in 2009 with less staff.
Yeah. So maybe pivot, adapt, and keep going.
I think so, yeah. You just keep moving, as I said, it is quite fickle. You just don't know. Like wars, ash cloud, the volcano clouds, COVID, Jesus. I thought it was on the pig's back and we were through all of this in 2019, and then 2020, I'm shut for 18 months. That was very tough. Psychologically for me, that was really tough. And not being used to somebody telling you can't work.
Right.
And not knowing when I was going to actually reopen, and keeping staff and keeping in touch with people and trying to stay positive. So we did dark kitchens. I created 2 new brands. They were keeping guys busy, but they weren't making any money for us. But they were keeping my team busy and keeping us all in a positive mode. But psychologically, yeah, that damaged me a bit. And I just wouldn't wish that on anybody at all. And when you look back, jeez, Christ, what was that for?
Yeah.
Another bad flu.
Yeah. I'm going to try to wrap this up here. So we're getting close to landing this plane. So I have a couple more questions for you. 2 questions I always like to ask people. What was the most influential book you've ever read?
The Hobbit as a kid. It gave me the spark for travel.
Okay.
Which is strange, but it really did. I always put that, probably another book. And then later on, I'm not a great reader. I like to read self-help type books. Ken Blanchard, The 1 Minute Manager.
Okay.
That's great. That was really good for me because it got me to a stage actually where I could actually go back to college and study. I went back and did a degree in culinary arts, but I had to put in place a team that I could let me go. And I was full-time course and I had 2 young kids and still the business to run, but it let me develop a team that I could micromanage. That was good. It was expensive, but it was good for me because I wanted to do it for my own head. One of those things that always defeated me. But him and, what's the other guy who moved my cheese? Spencer, I can't remember his last name, but another great book as well, all about change and how to manage change. And that in life is probably the most important thing that you have to understand. Nobody likes change. And if you can figure out how to manage change within your thing, and we're always changing. I'm always pushing that out. We'll always push it out. And it can take maybe 2 years to develop an idea I have, but it's not me. I'm developing the idea, but I'm developing the guys to actually run with it and let it become their idea, not my idea, their idea. If it's not their idea, it'll fall flat in its face. That's probably my ethos, the way I make things kind of work. And I guess going back to cookery, The Joy of Cooking, great book. Anyone starting out cooking wants to do that, fantastic.
Yeah. We'll include all the references in the show notes for the people listening as well, so they can reference those. Advice to your younger self. So what's one piece of advice? Not like this isn't, sometimes guests think this is about regret. I think it's more about, I would say it's not about regret at all. It's just about, we learn things along the way. And maybe what's one of those things that you've learned along the way that you wish you would have known earlier in life that maybe would have made the ride smoother to this point? So what's the one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
That's a difficult one. One piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice, and I can't think of any right now. Probably one. Yeah. Try and go to college when you're younger. I was 44 when I went back to do my degree, and a Friday night would come along, and with all these 18, 19-year-old kids, and they're ringing their mammy and daddy and saying, "Can I go out tonight?" I ring my wife and she says, "No, Jack."
Of course not.
Hey, you're not going anywhere. You get your ass home here. Do that while you're foot loose and fancy free. But yeah, no, I think just learning. Never be afraid to learn.
Yeah, I like that.
And travel. That's better than any college. 100%. Learned so much in college, but Jesus, there's nothing like having to get out. And like, you think about it, I ended up in South America. We had no mobile phones. I had no credit card. I had no way of getting back to Ireland unless I made some money and survived. So you had to survive. Yeah. They're skills that I think every kid should go through. It's skills for life.
I agree. I'm pro education, and like your journey and traveling and being self-taught is education. It's just not college. Yeah. I am, again, pro education, but I think especially in the United States where we have to pay an exorbitant amount of money for a university education, that oftentimes like people don't end up like using that degree for their whatever profession they land in.
They're working in the shop, they're working in a restaurant.
I guess I would be a bit curious to know, you obviously went to college early on and decided that wasn't for you at that time, but your learning didn't stop. Like, you've been learning to this day. So I would probably argue that have a more robust education based on the path that you chose to walk versus somebody who might have gotten a college degree in their early 20s that didn't have all these rich experiences. Do you have any takes on that?
What is a college degree, though? So really, you're learning from somebody else's experience or not your own experiences. Well, both of my kids went to college, and I think it's a great experience. It's a life experience. It's a growing up part of life that if you can afford it and you can do it, it's absolutely amazing and it's very good. But it's not, if you go to college and you become an electrician or a plumber or some of the manual, like my son did computer science and business in Trinity College. All his mates came out of college and they were earning 70, 80,000 euro a year. Jack came and worked with me and I said, "I'm not paying you that money." But his mates today are looking at AI and are looking, the longevity of their career is probably 2-3 years. People still eat. If your sink breaks down in the house or you need a plumber, we have this joke about the electricians, and I said, "Oh Jesus, you get a new Ferrari this week? I can see a heart surgeon cheaper than I can get a fucking electrician to come out."
Yeah.
So it's what you want in life. With college, I think it's a good foundation. It's a nice thing. You can afford it and you can afford to do it. Even if you are doing an arts degree and you're learning something, that's fantastic. But don't think you're going to college for 3, 4, 5 years and you're coming out with something that's, my daughter will argue, she's a dentist. So at least it's a good paying skill to learn.
Yeah.
And one that's not going to be taken over by AI anytime soon.
I think it's just do it for the right reasons. Yeah. Just don't blindly do it. Like pro education, if you have to pay for it, just be mindful.
Don't forget the partying.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a huge part of growing up.
getting back to the restaurant business and greeting people at the door and having those skills as a waiter to be one of their two best friends on their trip, there's a skill set to be learned via that interaction with your peer group as you're being early adulthood. So there's something to that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So thinking about the legacy that you have created, and you said you have a 5-year plan to retire. When
Rewire.
People talk,
Retire is a dirty word.
Rewire. All right. 5-year plan to rewire. So when people talk about Gallagher's Boxy House 20, 30 years from now, what would you hope they say about it?
It's a leader in Irish food worldwide. We have plans, or my son has plans to take it abroad. And I would hope within the next 10 years, you'll see a few Boxty houses, Gallagher's Boxty House. I should correct myself, as he keeps telling me. You should see a few Gallagher's Boxty houses throughout the world. And we're actively looking in London at the minute. And actually Jack's over in New York this week as well. We're looking around to get it right. I think I always promised my wife after we crashed in Cork that let's try and do the R&D a little bit better next time. I think it's a module. It is something that's special and can be replicated properly throughout definitely Europe and the US, North America, anywhere really you want to go. But step by step, we're not in a big hurry. We hope to get something positive in it within the next year or so, but it's actively pursuing it again. I tried it back in would have been the late 90s, because I spent quite a bit of time between Boston and New York trying to get to understand the cities. And my wife was between Florida, because she had family there with the kids, and Dublin. So I was doing this Fort Lauderdale, Boston, New York, Dublin, that. And after a few months, we said, no, listen, just forget this is not working right now. We just can't do it, because something would have given, and I wasn't prepared to sacrifice family marriage for it. So we said, no, forget about it. Let's do it later. No big hurry. We're doing okay. We're successful. We have money. We put the kids through school, put them through college, and do that. But I'm glad to say that he's eager, he's good, he's hungry to do it. And I've got a really good team with me. Like my COO was with me 25, 26 years. And I've got just developing a good team. And it's all about developing a good team. You want to expand out. And it costs money, because you still have to have the team running the baby, as I call it. And you need to have an extra team then to be able to get out and about and investigate stuff like that. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah. I think you're also working on cookbook. Is that correct?
Yeah. I'm finishing a master's in gastronomy at the minute, and I'm doing research on Florence Irwin, who wrote a cookery book in 37 Irish country recipes. And it's a real eye-opener as to the food that we were actually eating back in the 30s. Actually, the book is a collection of recipes. She was a Department of Agriculture instructress that went around County Down from 1907 to 1913. And she went around teaching people how to transform from open heart cooking onto stove cooking. And she actually carried a stove around with her. You can imagine this on the back of a horse and cart. But she collected recipes then from all these little villages and towns, and recipes she collected were just so rich, because we talk about the monoculture of the potato pre-famine, which was very much like the population of Ireland was 8.5 million before 1841, or in the 1841 census, and 3 million of those people ate potatoes solely, only potatoes every day. They ate something like 12 to 14 pounds of potatoes per person per day. So in monoculture, and obviously when the potato blight happened and the famine, the potato crop crashed, 1 million people died and another several millions emigrated, and it was catastrophic. And I think one of the things that we talk about our culture, we've been living that right up to the 80s, 90s, even the noughties. And it's only then that we've actually, the past 20 years or so, 25 years, we've come out of that we don't have a bon appetit. We don't say bon appetit, or in Ireland we say get it into you. When you were eating it, when we were kids eating, you weren't allowed to leave a scrap of food on your plate. My father spoke with people that had survived famine. So it was there in the back of our heads, and survival was very strong. But if you read Florence Irwin's 2 cookery books, Irish Country Recipes, and then The Cooking Woman was in 49, you'll see such a rich history of Irish food. Very basic, very simple staples. The staples were potatoes. In our cookery book, I think 30% of the recipes contained potatoes, either as an extender or a thickening agent or as Boxty. And she writes about Boxty. And if you think about the skill set, like Boxty does take skill to make, and it's a labor-intensive thing. But there's an old rhyme, when Boxty on the griddle, Boxty in the pan. If you can't make Boxty, you'll never get a man. But that just shows, if you go back at the history of, and I'm sure the United States wasn't much different. It might have been a bit more ahead of us. But the woman cooked in the home. That was the life. That was the structure of the family. The woman cooked in the home, and she controlled the eggs, she controlled the butter, and she controlled the poultry, and that was her money. The man of the house went out and he looked after the cattle. And like, we're talking about small farms here, like 10 acres, really small farms. But she is so important. She's probably the most important cookery writer in Ireland that no one has heard of. So I hope to change that now when I finish this. I'm actually on the final chapter of the thesis. I'll have it published and graduate in October. But an incredible woman, and just an incredible rich collection of food. Seaweed. In her book, she has, I think 12% of the recipes are from seaweed. And it's all about foraging, nettles. Like, it could be a hipster's book today. It really could. So it's just so cool and so good to have it. So rich, such a rich history that we don't know about. We've forgotten.
Yeah.
And as I said to you, the legacy of the famine, several generations to come out of that. We'd feel guilty about eating good food. And that takes generations to change.
Yeah. And last question, should be an easy one. Where can listeners find you at if you want to be found? Where can listeners find the restaurant at?
God, me with my head stuck in some book. The restaurant, which allows me the time to stick my head in books, is in 20 Temple Bar, Dublin to Ireland. Not too hard to find.
Gotcha. And we'll include any and all links to social media handles for the restaurant, the website, and the show notes so people can find it there.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, I just wanted to thank you for your time. I was just sitting here listening to your research. It's on Florence Irwin, is that right?
Florence Irwin, yeah.
You speak with such passion and interest. It's been a privilege to have this conversation with you. The passion and respect that you have for the food and culture, for your staff, it really comes through. So I just want to say thank you. I'm grateful for the time.
You're very welcome, Randall.
Thank you so much for your time.
Randall, sorry, before we go, happy St. Patrick's Day. I know this goes out later, but on Tuesday. And it's not Patty's, it's Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day. We are recording this on March 13th, and St. Patrick's Day is the 17th?
17th. Bang in the button. There you go. I'll have a whiskey for you.
I appreciate that. You have a good rest of your day. Thanks for your time.
Randall, take care. God bless.
Yeah, see you.
And that wraps up today's conversation on the Randall Osché Podcast. Thanks again to our guest for sharing their time, knowledge, and lessons with us. If the episode brought you any value, the best way to support the show is to follow or subscribe on your favorite platform. That helps us reach more people like you. You can also visit podcast.randallosché.com for blog posts, full transcripts, and other episode resources. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and keep moving forward.